Hare Krishna. Thank you and welcome to this Bhagavad Gita class. We will be reading from Bhagavad Gita as it is, and we are in chapter 10. The title of the chapter is Opulence of the Absolute, and we are going to read today verse 27. Uchchaishravasam ashvanam vidhi mam amrito udbhavam Airavatam gajendranam naranam cha naradhipam. So we'll read word by word translation now. I'll read and please repeat after me. Uchchaishravasam Uchchaishravasam Ashvanam among horses. Vidhi no. Mam me. Amrita Udbhavam produced from the churning of the ocean. Airavatam Airavata Gaja Indranam of lordly elephants. Narana among human beings. Cha Naradhipam the king. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Of horses, know me to be Uchchaishrava, produced during the churning of the ocean for nectar. Of lordly elephants, I am Airavata, and among men, I am the monarch. Purport: the devotee, demigods, and the demons, that is asuras, once took part in churning the sea. From the churning, nectar and poison were produced, and Lord Shiva drank the poison. From the nectar were produced many entities, of which there was a horse named Uchchaishrava. Another animal produced from the nectar was elephant, named Airavata. Because these two animals were produced from nectar, they have special significance, and they are representatives of Krishna. Among the human beings, the king is the representative of Krishna, because Krishna is the maintainer of the universe, and the kings who are appointed on account of their godly qualifications are maintainers of their kingdoms. Kings like Maharaj Yudhishthir, Maharaj Parikshit, and Lord Ram were all highly righteous kings who always thought of citizens' welfare. In Vedic literature, the king is considered to be the representative of God. In this age, however, with the corruption of the principles of religion, monarchy decayed and is now finally abolished. It is to be understood that in the past, however, people were more happy under righteous king. Om Ajnana Timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manoabhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utpadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamsha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Shri Lalita Vishaka Vitamsham. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Tapta Kanchan Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatrubhyasya Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavnebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. So I'll read the translation once again. Today we are reading verse 27. Krishna says, "Of horses know me to be Uchchaishrava, produced during the churning of the ocean for nectar. Of lordly elephants I am Airavata, and among men I am the monarch." So this churning of ocean, this pastime has been described in Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 8, Chapter 8. And there in the verse 3, it is said about this horse. And it said the horse was as white as moon. And who took this horse? Bali Maharaj. And Lord Krishna did not protest because they were advised, whatever they say, you should agree to it. You should not argue. So he agreed. And next verse it comes, Airavat was generated from the churning of ocean for nectar. I mean, first poison came, Lord Shiva drank it, and then they continued churning, and nectar was produced. And Airavata has been described as the king of elephants. And it's said in that verse, as the result of churning, king of elephants named Airavata was generated. This elephant was white, and with its 4 tusks, it defied the glories of Kailash mountain, the glorious abode of Lord Shiva. So both these animals came from churning of ocean. And there is not much about the horse. I have also read somewhere this horse, Uchchaishrava, has also been described as 7-headed and very powerful, and could go anywhere in all directions. Similarly about Airavata also, who could go anywhere. It is also said in Bhagavatam, same 8th canto, but 10th chapter, 25th verse. It's said, sitting on Airavata, that means it must be Indra. An elephant who can go anywhere and who holds water and wine in his trunk. And he showers this water and wine on Indra. So that's how he's doing Abhishek of Indra. But we also know after Govardhan Leela, when Indra realizes his mistake and he goes to seek forgiveness, so he comes with Surabhi cow, and Surabhi bathes the Lord with his own milk, with her own milk. And that time this Airavata, being asked by Mother Aditi and other mothers of demigods, he showered Lord Krishna. He bathed with water of Ganges, so which was appropriate. He also had 64 descendants, which is described in Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 59, verse 37. He had 64 white, swift white elephants, descendants of Airavata were there. Each had 4 tusks. And so about this elephant also, Airavat was also white. So generally white elephant are rare. And this Airavata, it has been said, it was white, and with its 4 tusks, it defied the glories of Kailash mountain, the glorious abode of Lord Shiva. And I was thinking how it has been compared. So I was, what I could think of, because this mountain Kailash is on top of Himalayas, is covered by snow. So that's why it's very white. So similarly, this elephant, even the white elephant that is rare in this world, will not be as white as this Airavata. And he also has been described as king of elephants here. And Uchchaishrava has been described as a king of horses. And also Krishna says here, of among men I am the monarch. So but what kind of king? Righteous king, not the kind of leaders or kings that we have today, and some of them have been named here. We have heard from Bhagavad Gita, and also we have today's Ram Navami. We know Lord Ramachandra, how righteous he was. One washerman questioned, was just questioning how Lord Ramchandra could keep Mother Sita, who stayed with some other man, and he was so detached just to set an example. He was ready to send away Mother Sita, just to set an example. And it is not that Lord Ramchandra was very happy to do it, but being a righteous king, he had to set an example. And even in this Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, in 89th chapter, there is a description of a Brahmana who was getting child, and after taking the birth, the child died. It happened once, twice. Then the Brahmana came and he was screaming and shouting, what are these Kshatriya kings? That means they are not properly executing their duties. That's why we have to suffer. Nowadays, which king or anybody takes responsibility of anyone? But those days, kings were so righteous and they took responsibility of the citizen, not just maintenance in the sense of material maintenance, but also all their needs and spiritual advancement. That is the kind of ideal society that was there in the past. And still people talk of Ram Rajya, means when we talk of utopian kind of society or governance, Ram Rajya is being quoted, at least in Indian community where it's known how Lord Ramchandra was righteous. It is being referred to even today. And in Bhagavad Gita also, righteous, the duties of righteous king has been described, that they give right kind of knowledge, and to all kind of ashramas and varnas. They can be situated in their whatever status they are, but they should be suitably engaged. And it's not just about being equality in sense of economic power or even doing same kind of work, but they were satisfied and nobody felt lowly or dissatisfied. Shudra also did not felt neglected or exploited. That was the society. So that's the kind of righteous king Kshatriyas. And also in chapter 4, Raj Rishayo, previously the kings were Raj Rishis, saintly. They were guided by Brahmanas and they themselves were also saintly. So they were also acting themselves piously. And to do this, their duty was to ensure to give the citizens proper spiritual knowledge, so that the Brahmanas are protected, the Brahminical culture is protected, and by education, culture and worship, everyone is engaged in practicing the message of Krishna. And this was this kind of kingdom that was there in the past, which may look like a myth now. It is only may seem like story. We don't have any such examples these days. But it was the duty of the king to protect the citizen from Maya and keep them properly engaged in their varnas and ashramas. So also this king of horses and king of elephants may not mean like they would have ruled over other elephants, not only the white elephants or even the black elephants or the society of elephants, or Ucheshrava would have ruled over society of among the horses. If we look in the dictionary, the word king would also be synonymous to majesty, which means greatness or splendor of quality or character. So they were unique or great in these qualities, like white, very powerful, they could go in any direction. That way they have been described as the king. So these opulences have been described by Krishna. to increase our remembrance of him, how we can see him in this material world. In the beginning of this chapter, it starts with Bhuya eva mahabaho shrunu me paramam vacham yatte priyamanaya vakshyami hit kamaya. Because I want your benefit, I am again saying. Why Krishna says I am saying again? Because he said in chapter 7. He says in chapter 9 also he has described himself. So to increase our remembrance and how we perceive him in things around us, in the world around us, how to see Krishna, how to increase our remembrance of Krishna, Krishna is giving us this knowledge. It's not limited to what has been described here. Like it has been summarized at the end of the chapter, whatever beautiful, opulent or glorious creation you see, it springs from a spark of me. So whatever these things we are hearing or even reading, it may seem wonderful to us, but Krishna says it's only a spark of me. Also, like of horses, it's not, Krishna doesn't say that he's Hayagriva. I was also thinking, why didn't he say? Then I was listening to one of the classes on this chapter, and the answer came to me there. I think that verse is yet to come. Of the wielders of weapons I am Ram. And there the teacher asked, so which Ram? So this is not Lord Ramchandra who is born today, not that Ram. It's Parshuram, Ram with axe. Because Krishna is talking of his opulences, not of his incarnations. That's why it's not Hayagriva. He says, even, and also similarly, Lord Krishna is speaking about opulences, his opulences to Uddhava in Canto 11. And same descriptions come of the serpents I am Vasuki, of the horses I am Uchchaishrava, of the elephants, of the lordly elephants I am Airavata. Same descriptions come. It's the same thing. And even in that chapter, it said Krishna is very happy that again another friend is asking the same question, which like Arjuna is also very dear friend of him. He's asking the question and same question is being asked. And actually these souls, both Arjuna, Uddhava, they are not asking for their own benefit. They are asking or posing to be in ignorance or having some doubt just for our benefit, to give this knowledge to this world for our benefit. Krishna comes again and again, sends his representative. Like in Bhagavad Gita at the end he says, have you carefully heard, have you understood? If not, I am ready to explain again. But he doesn't force the living entity to accept what he says. He still gives us the choice, leaves it upon us whether we want to accept or not to accept. He didn't even force Arjuna, although he says, you are very dear to me. Even in 529, end of chapter 5, Suhida Sarva Bhutanam, not just human being, all living entities. He is the most well-wishing friend. But he doesn't force anyone. He gives this free will. Otherwise, there's no meaning of love. If someone forces upon, and what is the meaning of free will? And if there is no meaning of free will, then we are just acting like a robot, then it's like a play. It's not really like that. We have minute free will. We have a choice. We always have a choice. Krishna is giving the knowledge, but still we may accept. We may accept in whole or in part. But Prabhupada advises us in the introduction, and even in this chapter, Prabhupada says, like, we should accept way Arjuna accepted him. Param Brahma Param Dhama. And Sarvam Evam Ritam Manye. Whatever you say, I accept as truth. And somebody may think because Arjuna is his friend, he's flattering. But thereafter, he quotes that all rishis also accept you. That's why. And why he's doing all this? Just to leave it for us who will read Bhagavad Gita in the future and may avail its benefit. So, right now, in the conditioned state, our senses are all contaminated and we cannot see the Satchidananda Vigraha of Krishna. Even the spirit soul The Jivatma is Sachidananda. We can neither see with our material eyes, nor even under microscope, because what its size has been described, 1 by 10,000 tip of a hair. Now with the aging, sometimes we cannot see full hair, what to talk of a tip of a hair, and then 1 by 10,000 size. There is no instrument that can ever be invented that will be able to see the soul. But we can feel its presence by consciousness, that there is something which when leaves the body, although the body appears to be exactly the same, but it doesn't function, it has no value, it can do nothing. It is like hand severed from the body, it is like a dead matter. And so that's how we perceive the soul, and this is the most important knowledge, but it is being neglected in all the educational institute, not only all over the world, even in India. But Krishna, when he starts to speak Bhagavad Gita, right from chapter 2, he speaks about the science of soul. So Krishna is giving that knowledge. Even our senses right now, they are contaminated, but we can purify them, we can spiritualize them. The difference between things, perceiving the things as material and spiritual, is only this, is that we fail to see connection with Krishna. If we are able to see everything in connection with Krishna, whether it's living being or an object, then it becomes spiritual. And when we are able to see everything in connection with Krishna, then we will be able to see how it can be engaged in Krishna's service, and that's the only proper engagement for that object or person, because if it belongs to Krishna, it has to be offered to the Krishna. If we are not doing that, we are thieves. And how can a thief expect to be happy? We want to be happy, but we don't want to accept the right ways. So Prabhupada says we have to accept Bhagavad Gita as it is. One thing is way Krishna is saying it, and everything, not part of it, what I like I accept. Of course we can do that. That's somewhere we can make a beginning, that I accept at least as much as I like, but we have to accept in total whatever Krishna is saying. Something may be difficult at this stage of my practice, but if we try to practice, Krishna will empower us, give us that strength and knowledge. He also says, I am the strength of the strong, intelligence of the intelligent, in chapter 7. So everything comes from Krishna. Sometimes we may earn money and we may think Krishna is saying karmanyeva adhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachanam. So it may sound like, why so? You have right to the duty but not to the fruit, because everything comes from Krishna. I may think I worked hard, I put my labor, I put my intelligence, but from where does this intelligence come? Krishna says, Matta smritir jnanam apohanam cha. From me comes intelligence. Even forgetfulness comes from Krishna. If we want to forget Krishna, Krishna will help us in that manner also, that we don't remember Krishna at all. But if we want to remember Krishna, Krishna will help us in a manner that we can increase his remembrance. So this, the knowledge that's given in this chapter, also starting from chapter 7, all these chapters, Krishna is giving the knowledge by which we can increase our perceptions in these material objects. Of course, this is not a very high understanding, but in our current state, this is the necessity to make a beginning. And it said, Ata Shri Krishna Namadi na bhaved grahyam indye sevan mukhe hi jivadu swayam eva sfurati adav. So Krishna's names and qualities, all these cannot be perceived by our blunt material senses. But sevan mukhe, by engaging in service and starting with tongue, jivado swayam, then everything will become manifest. And how the tongue should be engaged? There are two functions of tongue: speaking and eating, tasting. So speaking about Krishna or hearing also, while hearing about Krishna, or even tasting Krishna Prasad. And of course the consciousness is important, very important, but even if we are unconscious, because the prasad has transcendental value, it will have some effect. But if we really accept the Krishna Prasad, if we honor Prasad with the proper consciousness that this is Krishna's mercy, and this will invoke Krishna consciousness, or fan the spark of Krishna consciousness in me, it will bring me closer to Krishna. If we are taking Prasad with that consciousness, that it will increase my remembrance of Krishna, it will spiritualize my senses. Krishna says that, so why shouldn't I believe him? Whom should I believe? All the current leaders, or even our parents mostly, I mean some of the devotees who are in Krishna consciousness, they are trying to bring up their child in Krishna conscious manner. But otherwise mostly, even the Indians, they don't know Bhagavad Gita. They know there is a book, it's a religious book. It may be at their home or maybe not there at home also. It's found unnecessary to read all this, or it's considered that when people are old they can read all this. In the youth, prime youth, they are busy engaging money and increasing their economic standards and increasing their level of sense gratification. That is their goal of life. But what Bhagavatam says, life's desire should never be directed to sense gratification. We should, having got this human form of body, we should aim for higher purpose. And there has to be some austerity, which is difficult. Austerity means accepting inconvenience, but not whimsically. Again, with the proper consciousness that we are doing for pleasure of Krishna. If we accept austerity, like today there was fasting, it was much short, up to 12 it's nothing. Sometimes it's until evening, or Janmashtami is longest. It may be difficult, but we should try. But again, we should not be whimsical. Just fasting is not the goal. With the age, or sometimes somebody may not be that old, but due to bodily construction or physical condition, he or she may not be able to fast. Fasting is not the goal. We have to, upavas just doesn't mean fasting. Upavas means upa and vas. Vas means stay, and upa means close. So we have to get closer to Krishna. This is one means where we can cut down on our eating needs and other needs. If we eat less, naturally we will not fall asleep also. If we eat more, naturally we get sleep. And like when we fast for this Nirjala Ekadashi, the night is almost forcefully sleepless. We cannot sleep. But if that is not helping us to bring close to Krishna, then it's not useful. Like I would say, when I was here in the first year in Vrindavan, it was very hot, and I tried to practice that, and that time I had not seen. Now I see that ISKCON Vrindavan calendar says that only those, not it says only those, but those who broke the Ekadasi fast somewhere, who had not followed somewhere one of the Ekadasis, they need to follow this Nirjala. Otherwise it's not so compulsory. Of course you can, if your body allows, if you are able to do it, it's good. Krishna says, I am penance. So it's good to do austerities, but it's not necessary. First year I tried to do, and the condition was, obviously I didn't get sleep in the night. But in Mangal Aarti I'm not even able to repeat. I'm just thinking, when will this end? And fortunately the time of breaking this Ekadasi is just after Mangal Aarti, Tulsi Puja immediately after that. The announcement is there, and there is some preparation time. Prasad will be brought to Prasad Hall, but it's always immediately after this. And I was just waiting for Prasad. And I even the night, each moment, Yugaitam Nimishena, it passed like to that. But it's not good just to follow like that. So I stopped following that. but those who can follow is good if we can. But this abstaining from food is not the goal of Upvas. It has to increase our remembrance of Krishna. So by reading, hearing, chanting, we get more time by eating less or spending less time on cooking and other activities, and to spend on more on these spiritual activities which can bring us closer to Krishna. This is the goal of any fasting. So we should do with proper consciousness and with proper intelligence also. Like in chapter 4 it is said, activities performed without transcendental knowledge remains on material platform. So even though we may be doing something as a ritual because we are born in India, we know some rituals we are following, but if we don't do with a proper understanding, it will not bring the same benefit as we do with the complete knowledge. So we should be eager to understand the philosophy. Of course, our intelligence is not same, but we try to understand as much as Krishna allows. And Krishna is very kind friend, seated as is described as two birds sitting in the same tree. So Krishna is such a close friend, and he will give any living entity who is sincere, he will give him that much knowledge, at least that much knowledge, which will help him to get close to him. In this chapter itself we have read in the 10th verse, Tesham Satatyuktanam Bhajatam Priti Purvakam. When somebody serves with love, Krishna says, I give them the intelligence. I give them the intelligence how they come to me. Last chapter ended with Manmana Bhakto. So Manmana Bhav Mad Bhakto. Think of me. So how to think of me? Krishna is giving here, and Arjuna also asks this question. How can I Arjuna wishes to know how you pervade this entire world. And then Krishna says, I'll only describe the principal ones because it's unlimited. So whether it's described in this chapter or not, whenever we see something great or with which we are getting very impressed, we see someone very intelligent, someone very beautiful, very rich, very generous, very kind, we have to think this is spark of Krishna. And if this is spark of Krishna, we can think if we are seeing somebody kind and we are so impressed, how much kind is Krishna? Of course we are reading, hearing, but we have to increase our remembrance of Krishna. How kind is Krishna? That he is seated with as a friend within our heart, and he is not a friend for this lifetime. Life after life, our parents, brother, mother, sister, friends, we come together for some few years in this lifetime. Like even in this lifetime, there are so many changing relationships. As a child, when the child is born, whether boy or girl, he is so much dependent on his mother. If especially the mother is at home, if the child is with a babysitter all the time and then he's not so familiar with mother, then it will not bring the same kind of relationship. But still, somehow this relationship is such a thing that even the working mothers, as soon as they get back home, they are giving time to their child. So the child knows his mother very well, and as if he knows only mother, and anybody else in the world he fears even to go, or anybody touches him, he's so fearful. One moment mother is hiding and he starts crying, like when the child gets up from sleep, especially small kids, they start crying as if they feel lost. But as the child grows up, they may get married, or they get busy with their jobs, business, career, and whether they get married, if they get married for sure, and otherwise also, this closeness of relationship gets further, and it changes so much that whether man or woman to whom the mother was so dear, mother and father also, but mostly I would say mother was so dear that at some point they may seem like trouble also. They develop so much attachment to their newlywed wife, and mother feels totally very lost and very sad at heart. But actually this is the nature of material world. The mother feels very sad when the son is too much attracted by newlywed wife. But when she was newlywed, and probably if she got that attention, she would have loved it, and if she didn't, she would have complained that I left my home and came, I'm all alone, so I need support, I need, and he's the only, I mean, mother-in-law, father-in-law, these names come, but husband is closest. So she expects his support, and if she doesn't get, she complains to her friends, parents, mothers, like that. And if she gets, she is happy. But when the same thing happens years after, that the son is supporting his wife, the mother feels pain in the heart. So even the relationships also within this material world, they keep changing. They are very temporary. The friends also, sometimes we become friends in train. We talk so much, and it feels like we know each other from so many years, and we may exchange addresses and keep in touch, but it doesn't last for long. So even in this lifetime, these relationships don't stay forever, and cannot stay. With death, even husband, wife, I mean, sometimes in accident they die at the same time, same day, but otherwise they die at different times. So these relationships do not stay. But Krishna, life after life, stays with us. He's such a kind friend, and he is waiting for us to get back to him. So we should try to increase our remembrance of Krishna, see his presence in things all around us. Somebody has constructed a nice building, take a nice photograph, but he's only exhibiting a spark of splendor of Krishna. Without Krishna's blessing, nobody can do anything. I may think I'm very intelligent, I can do this and that, but if Krishna withdraws the power, even within this lifetime, a very intelligent man may be paralyzed or may have a brain stroke, and what to forget of other intelligent knowledge, whatever he had gained during his lifetime, but may not be even be able to recognize his relatives, friends, people around him. Like it happened with Muhammad Ali, the wrestler, you might have heard. He used to say, I'm the greatest, and later on he got Parkinson's disease. He's not able to lift his hand to take the food to his mouth. So if Krishna withdraws the power, even Arjuna, when Krishna was there, he was the greatest warrior, and after Krishna left this world, same Arjuna was defeated. So this is what we need to remember. Whatever we are doing or able to do little bit or great, it's only by Krishna's mercy we are able to do. We should not be proud of it, and always be thankful to Krishna, his devotees, especially Srila Prabhupada, without whom we would not be able to understand Bhagavad Gita, without him the knowledge would remain inaccessible, especially in the way, in simple words he has tried to explain, and simple English also, simple words, the analogies, he has tried to make it accessible to men of Kali Yuga who are not very intelligent like me, and most of us, the people of Kali Yuga, has been described as less intelligent, and as the Kali Yuga progresses, people will be more and more degraded. So without Prabhupada's mercy, we would have never had access to this knowledge. So we should be thankful to Vaishnavas also, Krishna and his representatives, also Lord Chaitanya. Prabhupada also very much tried to preach teachings of Lord Chaitanya, who was so merciful, who saw our state, that Krishna says Sarva Dharman Parityajya, but we are not able to do that. And then he mercifully comes. He's feeling so much pain at heart that, okay, you gave such a instruction that, okay, even if you don't understand anything, just surrender unto me. But still people are not able to accept this instruction. So Lord Chaitanya comes with Golokir Prem Dhan. Just by chanting of holy name, we can attain perfection. This is the kindness of mercy of Lord Chaitanya. And Prabhupada understood and gave it to the whole world. And without mercy of Lord Chaitanya, this Krishna consciousness movement would not or could not have spread all over the world way it is spreading. It would have been impossible. So it's all Krishna's arrangement. We have to be very thankful and grateful, and with a heart full of gratitude, we have to increase our remembrance of Krishna in whatever ways. Yena kena prakarena mana Krishna niveshayat. We should try to increase our remembrance every day, every hour, every moment. Whatever we are doing, whatever we are seeing, we have to see how to connect things to Krishna. Then, even while we are in this world, then it's not a material world. Then it's Jivan Mukta Sa Uchyate. Then, even while being in this body, in this material world, we can be liberated. So, I would stop here. If anybody has some questions or comments, you may share. Yeah.
I have heard in some other classes, I have not read it myself, that this horse meditation is in Sutaralo along with Balima.
Yeah. No, it is there in Bhagavatam. In this 8.8.3, when it said Uchashrava came, it is said, Bali Maharaj asked for it, and I also repeated. Yeah, so naturally.
He said it is in, right now it is in Sutaralo.
I mean, Loka, I don't know, but Bali Maharaj is this demon, so he's lower planet, I know. Which Loka, I would not be able to say, I'm not so knowledgeable. But surely lower planets, because Bali Maharaj is, although a devotee, but a demon. So that's why. He must be in lower planet. Which planet, I am not sure. I have not read. Possible. Okay, so it's there, yeah. So they are much more well read. Thank you. So, it must be true. Bali Maharaj took it, that's there in Bhagavatam, this verse. I think that's all. Thank you for coming. Hare Krishna.